You're listening to Pop This, the podcast where two women talk about everything pop culture. Here are your hosts, Lisa Christiansen and Andrea Warner.
So I just want to say thank you for noticing my hair.
Yeah, I'm sorry that, should we take a picture of it right now? Because I did not come with my makeup face.
I don't have my makeup face, so
Okay.
we can just describe it. It's, it's similar to what you've seen before because, well, I don't do that many drastic things, but it was my first hair appointment in 4 months, I guess, right?
I think it has a significant sort of side part, and it's like a bit shorter than we've seen it recently.
Yeah.
And the honey blonde really pops. So
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So yeah, I mean, it was a fine experience during our COVID time. So I wore a mask the whole time, which is a 2-hour appointment of highlights and all that stuff. So that's always an interesting experience. And then you come out and you're like, hello world. And you realize you're not really going a lot of places, which is, so I liken the getting the hair done to when you have your really nice underwear and nobody knows. So it's still good.
Yeah.
or the time that my hot water tank burst. Mm-hmm. And I had to get a new one, and it was $1,000. And I didn't have you want people to come over and see it, right? Because you spent a lot of money on something you weren't expecting.
Yep.
For some reason, even though this hot water heater is still going, and it's been obviously very satisfying in my life, I feel like I'd have rather bought shoes. I feel like I would have rather bought some Louboutins for $1,000.
Even though you're like, I don't even wear Louboutins, but I want to own them instead of this new water heater.
Right?
Yeah, I get it.
And you can't bring people over for drinks and then go, okay, well, before dinner, I just wanted you to come down and see my hot water tank and, list off all of the many features. It's 33 gallons. I mean, I know some people might have gone larger, but,
You could.
But I mean, all of your fancy shoes and dresses and clothes and bags are probably just languishing in your closet right now anyway, too.
I know, but why is it if somebody said right now you needed to buy a dress for some event, there's a really good chance you might only wear it once or twice. I mean, maybe 3 times. You'd have to really make an effort, right? Because the next time you're going to go to a big event, you can't wear the same dress.
I mean, now you can, I think. Now you just put on a slightly different scarf, or you wear the top as a bottom or the bottom as a top. Basically, no one has to know if you're pantsless at all of your galas.
Well,
now,
yeah,
right?
that you're right.
That's
true.
really exciting. So, just think about what you could do is you could cut the crotch out of any pantsuit, stick your head through the crotch part, and then your arms out the legs, and turn it into a whole second part of your outfit.
I've never thought about that.
Nobody tuned into this podcast thinking there was some DIY fashion, but folks, things in COVID are all very different. You are the
queen. Andrea's the queen of repurposing socks for gloves, for instance.
I came in one day to work and I said to AG, look what I did with my socks that had holes in the toes. And I had turned them I'd cut a little hole into so I could make a thumb and I have basically a wrist cover from and it was really great because it was like having fingerless gloves, but I still had a whole portion for my thumbs.
I'm wearing t-shirts this is one of the best things I ordered online. I was a cashmere cardigan.
Oh, the Good Fight, Alicia.
Yes.
The Good Wife, sorry. Not the Good Fight, but yeah.
Really good. And I just like to touch myself in it, so I think I'm getting extra.
That's a different podcast, Lisa.
Sorry, well, I just have a moment with me and my cardigan. Okay. Which also is appropriate wear in Vancouver since over Canada Day it became winter.
Yeah, January is carrying on.
Game of Thrones here now, and there's not even a joke about July. It's just July with heat.
It's just climate change really coming at us.
Oh, is that what this is?
I mean, I would assume. But
yeah, I've stopped thinking about climate change just because I'm worried about dying every day. So should I put that back on the menu? Or?
Yeah, no, we've got a I think we've got all of them just competing for our attention right now. It's all the things. All the things. Sorry, not to stress you out, but
That's too late.
yeah.
I live in a state of constant stress. It's just waiting for the other shoe to drop all the time, isn't it?
Well, at least you have the good hair.
You know what? And the cardigan. So really,
Life's not so
you know,
bad.
What more do you want?
and that's another thing with COVID. My expectation level of life is really reduced.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, these small pleasures are the things we have to hold dear.
There we go.
What do you mean? Having great hair and a nice cardigan?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, those are great things.
Sorry, that's not a small pleasure. That's like just a significant
Ugh.
triumph.
Life
Okay,
goal.
apologies.
Life goals.
Apologies.
Okay, there we go. So then I've arrived. Boom.
Lisa,
Bang.
stop wanting anything else.
I'm done.
AG, so you also, I have seen, you own several great tops / sort of like sweaters, and you have great hair as well. So you're good too. Like everything is just.
No, I mean, I haven't reached like my hair goals as much as Lisa has.
Oh, okay.
Oh, is that good, hey?
Yeah.
Let me just take my headphones off again then.
What are
Yeah.
What are your hair goals, AG?
I didn't even want
I don't know.
Do you want to go back
like
to
this
the bowl
idea.
cut?
It's like this idea. I saw this film recently called Utopia, and it was about the late filmmaker Peter Wintonic, who directed Manufacturing Consent, and his daughter made this film with his sort of materials of his unfinished film after he passed away. And it was super great, super moving film, but it was about the idea of utopia. And what is utopia? And I feel like in a way that's what our pursuit of good hair. It's just like, what is good hair? Do you know when you arrive there? Like, is this as good as my hair gets? Who knows? I don't know.
And can you decide for yourself? Not really. It has to be somebody else, right? It can't be.
I don't know.
I can't just
but yet
stare at
our
myself
whole
in the mirror
lives
going,
we
well, that's
pursue
it.
this idea that we're gonna eventually achieve our good hair.
Okay. That's interesting you brought that up, because this is one of and I'm sure over the years have brought this up, but one of my things is why science fiction in the future is always bad. Everything in the future is always, always, always bad. And I realize living through this right now, it's not a good time to bring this up, but sometimes I want a book or a story where the future is better, where we figure stuff out and it starts to get better. But every science fiction thing, it's like, the road where it's like, avoid cannibals or nuclear radiation, and then you might have to shoot yourself in the head. Like, it's so bleak. So I would just like to have some thought where it's in the future. And then everyone always yells at me going, well, then there's no tension to that. There's no conflict. And I don't know, make it a rom-com then or something. Just, why does it always have to be like the rain stopped, no one can have a baby, all of air is polluted? Like, can't we just do something a bit better?
Well, maybe you should invent that genre. Happy science fiction.
You should invent that genre.
Nobody wants that.
Like, I will say, I know that this is not like, I mean, obviously we do not want a pandemic. We do not want and specifically I'm talking about the pandemic right now. But like, one of the things that I've been kind of surprised and pleasantly surprised about is the extent to which like people have really tried to help each other. And I know like the community group that I belong to on Facebook, like about like sort of Vancouverites, like are able to post for things that they need, or people are offering things or whatever. And like, it's not perfect. And like, there should be like everyone's basic social needs should be met. We should, have, I believe like universal income and everyone has a right to shelter, et cetera, et cetera. But I've been really pleasantly surprised that like people have tried to come together in this pandemic to sort of like fill in the gaps in our social structures. And I know that like the longer that goes on, the more difficult that will be, because there's sort of like a scarcity mode that people are sort of moving into and going to be operating in the longer folks are out of work. But I have been like pretty happy that this particular like pandemic has has like brought out a kindness in people that I've always suspected existed and had faith in. But a lot of that is like associated with my own privileges, and it has transpired. At the very least, people who are online, who already have that privilege of being online, have been able to connect with each other.
There you go.
This is a movie that we have wanted to do for a really long time. It's been on our list, and we love to do things on the wrong anniversary. So Set It Off turns 24 this year, and we also love Queen Latifah, and we're working our way through all of her major films. AG, do you want to read the background for us?
Sure. Set It Off is a 1996 American crime action heist film directed by F. Gary Gray and written by Kate Lanier and Takashi Buford. This film stars Jada Pinkett, Queen Latifah, Vivica A. Fox, and Kimberly Elise in her film debut. The film became a critical and box office success, grossing over $41 million against a budget of $9 million. And that's from Wikipedia.
That's so wild, isn't it? Like that, like is just such a significant amount of money. I'm so happy about that.
Yeah. And I will do synopsis. So Set It Off is about 4 women who decide they need to rob banks. Let me be sure to say that summary is more true literally than philosophically. Mainly what they do, or what they want to do, is rob the system. They aim to do so as retribution for the way the system, financial institutions, the justice system has cast them aside, and the movie does a good job of engaging with that idea. To wit, of the 4 women, Stoney, Jada Pinkett Smith, Cleo, Queen Latifah, Frankie, Vivica A. Fox, and TT, Kimberly Elise, 3 of them experience radical injustices during the first 20 minutes, each one touching on a different part of the way a person's life can be ruined. And that's from Shea Serrano at The Ringer. Wow.
Yeah, I thought that
Yes.
summary like really sort of captures the spirit of the film in a way that a lot of other synopsises didn't. Like it, and I think it's so important that that first 20 minutes, which are really hard to watch, like a series of awful things happen, bang, 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 and honestly, literally bang, bang, bang. And then it gets into a heist film. But it's so important to have that sort of context, and it really helps us, I think, understand these characters as very like well-rounded characters that we care about so quickly because we're so deeply invested in their lives.
Yeah, and I think for a heist movie to work always, you have to sort of feel like you want them to accomplish it for a good reason.
Yes.
Whether it's Ocean's 11 wanting to take down an awful casino owner, whatever, like you have to sort of want to be there. This is a very different heist movie, though, that's for sure. It's not Point Break here. This is, which I think is around the same time, early 90s. So I that's the one I was kind of thinking about because that kind of had that was around the same time and that kind of like robbing banks and but this is wow, this is a lot. This, especially as you said, those first 20 minutes.
So I had never seen it before. Oh, sorry, AJ, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Well, I was going to say, I think it's a heist movie set against the background of like all of these things like misogyny and like racism and state violence and all of these things that are kind of happening, like the way we watched Watermelon Women. It's just kind of woven into the background of the film and part of the story. It's not overtly like putting these things in our faces. It's just like this is a part of these characters' everyday lives and what they have to live with. And at the same time, it's the backdrop to this heist movie where they're trying to rob a bank or multiple
several
banks.
Yeah, and I think like about and about sort of robbing the system as opposed to robbing like just a bank and what a bank stands for in this case, over and over again. So I had never seen Set It Off before. I know that this continues to be a pattern of things I've just never seen. Apparently,
I have seen it.
You have seen it?
Repeat. Yeah.
AG, have you seen it?
No, this is the first time.
Yeah. So Lisa, tell me a little bit, just like when you saw it and how you felt about it now versus then.
Yeah, like I said, I've mentioned before that I like watching heist movies. I watch a lot of them, and I thought it was a really clever device to take that heist movie and put it into an experience where it's not about just being a bank robber for the sake of bank robbery. This is about 4 women who have been absolutely pressed to the point that there is no way that they're ever going to be able to get to a place where it's even normal. That everything around them constantly reminds them, no matter how hard you try, no matter how hard you work, no matter how whatever you do, it's not going to be enough. And there are barriers to you that other people just do not have. I think the first time I saw it, it didn't affect me the same way.
Yeah, like it's a really it's a sort of violent start to a film, but it's also very like electrifying, and it's also, we see immediately that she is considered a suspect somehow by association of where she comes from and association of the color of her skin, that she didn't like do her job right with a gun like in her face, like just
After seeing someone shot.
She's literally covered in this woman's blood and brains, and it's still, and just the way that she is treated by the cops immediately, like it was, ugh.
It's so enraging too. Just, the reason she gets fired is because of this so-called like relationship she must have to the suspect, when it's just like, oh my God, it's just like someone you went to school with or something. Like under like any other circumstances, you wouldn't assume that, like they were accomplices or they knew each other somehow and she was helping him. Like it was, just that like first thing where she gets fired because of this is just so maddening right off the bat.
I have to say also, I mean, this is jumping ahead, and I presume anyone listening to the podcast has already watched it, or if it's 24 years old, so I'm not going to feel bad.
Yeah.
So I'm going to jump ahead, but I have to say that I did find it being a little bit of a plot hole that Blair Underwood still has his job after he literally was dating the one woman who got away with all the money.
Well, it's so interesting to me because I feel like they kind of, I feel like that's like a little, I was thinking about that a lot actually. And I was wondering if that's a bit of a commentary on the fact that like these bank officials, like I feel like these cops did not know about the relationship between Stoney.
But somebody at the bank did, like his friend did. He went to that cocktail party.
His pal at the bank did, but I also think that like that guy probably was not going to remember her name because, he's not going to think that this like very like elegantly dressed, like, Blair Underwood goes and gets Stoney this new outfit, gives her the, the sort of pretty woman makeover, as it were.
Yeah, which I am like done. But anyway, we can get to that.
But I feel like they just there's just this sort of like presumption that she's not even the same woman because that's a different type of person.
But he literally gets a phone call and he is not at the bank when the robbery happened.
Oh no, I know. I don't think those cops were not great at their jobs anyways. Truly are terrible.
Yeah, it's not a stretch. I don't think it's a stretch to assume that like those people at the bank would not be able to tell Black people apart and not. Yeah, just from my experience as like an Asian person in a city where there's tons of Asian people, like people I actually really see on a regular basis, like sometimes mistake me for other people. Sometimes like I could see myself totally getting away with something like this because people don't know I'm the same person.
Oh my God, how many banks have you robbed? Tell me everything
wow,
right now. I want to know.
Comes out now.
I want to know everything. So like,
I know that's a bit of a digression. Sorry. But,
no. I think it is possible actually. But I having never seen this movie, one, I like obviously this is like it's my own failings that I've never seen it. But I was not prepared for the emotional journey. I was not prepared for the number of times I cried.
I sent you a text.
Yes, you did.
I did.
You tried to warn me.
I did try to warn you.
Yeah, no, I just like I was not like I just didn't know. I just didn't know exactly what I was sort of like getting. But also, it's really funny. The movie is also deeply funny in a lot of places. I kept noting, like, every time basically, like, Jada Pinkett is interacting with Queen Latifah, and she's really sort of trying to keep Cleo in check. Like Stoney's job half the time seems to be keeping Cleo in check. And she's just like, she's very like their relationship is very funny, and obviously there's like a really, you know, big fight that they have, and it's good. It's and that like the fact that
Not a big fight. Person puts a gun in your face. I mean,
but like but honestly, like when that happened, I actually was like deeply upset because I'm so now invested in like the 20 years of this friendship that apparently exists between like these characters, and I can't think of like a lot of other. I mean, I do get invested in friendships pretty quickly, but like the four of them together, I just really was into it, and I felt things like much more deeply than I think I would have that I've ever, you know, felt before in like a heist movie. AG, what were your thoughts as seeing it for the first time?
I can see why it's become a cult classic, and because it's one of those films that makes you, it's pop culture, but it also makes you think very deeply about all the, you know, issues these women are facing and why they were driven to do what they're doing and how these things have been happening. This film was made in 1996, and you know, like they're talking about all of the same issues that are still going on today that everyone is talking about. And you know, it's astounding because like you just realize that people have been talking about this and making art about this for a very long time and nothing has changed, and it's depressing in that sense. But I found it inspiring because I mean it's at the heart of it is about this friendship between four women who ultimately sacrifice each other to help to help each other survive this system that they're oppressed under. And yeah, even though it's ultimately, you know, it's hard to watch because the ending is not happy, really. Um, I found it inspiring to see a story about women like this, like trying to fight the system.
Yeah, and I think all the issues we're having with police and when there's that much manpower to try and
Oh yeah.
Well, that's
find
the police.
four women who were have absolutely nothing at all,
Even just
and
like
no services to help them.
yes,
But there's so many cops to fly down on a helicopter and on the streets
helicopters
and everything to capture them when they're at the absolute end of their rope. And I think that's what when Andrew, when you say it was a cult classic, I think that's what it is. It just captured that that sense. And we don't see movies with women in these kinds of it had almost a Western feel to it as well.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like especially with the way they died, all of them.
Well, 3 out of 4.
Well, sorry,
Yeah,
3 out of 4. Yeah. Again, it's 24 years old, everyone. So just and also just that one of them escapes to Mexico, which is also very on brand with a Western, but just that I can't go back now. Like this is, you know, we've turned a corner and this is what it looks like now. And I think that's what makes the film resonate is that turn that they all make where it's suddenly I can't do this anymore. Like there's nothing for me anymore. There's you know there's no going forward. There's nothing that's going to make this work.
Yeah, and and the bleakness with that is it's so hard. I mean, I think like that show of force and that what you were talking about before, AG, like the brutality of the show of force by police, and we've seen this over and over again. You know, there are so many ways that money could be spent to sort of like provide safer housing for people, help people with childcare. Like there's so many things that could have made so many people's lives better. And there's this article Clarkeisha Kent wrote a 2019 Entertainment Weekly article about why the film shouldn't be remade. And Clarkeisha has like some excellent. It's a really long article. I've got a bunch of different sort of things that I think are really important about it, but I'm just gonna just read this one part about as a time capsule, like historically, what is so important about it. And I think that this is important context, particularly for Canadians to understand about an American film and about an African American film. So Clarkeisha's article, she says, Set It Off is a perfect time capsule. It's a film about the 90s that takes place in the 90s. No rose-colored glasses are walking you through what is but a memory of the decade. Director F. Gary Gray, a Los Angeles denizen, places you within it and forces you to engage with its trappings. Set in Los Angeles during the mid-90s, the film was released 4 years after the Rodney King trial and the uprising that followed, and just 2 years after then President Bill Clinton signed the 1994 Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act into law, which accelerated mass incarceration and further built on the already racist legacy of Reagan's war on drugs that decimated Black communities in this country. Set It Off doesn't latch onto this context in a way that is gimmicky, the way a movie made later about the same era might. It uses this context to elevate itself from a normal heist film to one that could realistically occur if a Black woman was pushed to the brink in a country that wants to punitively grind her into the dust. And I just think that's exactly, I mean, this essay that she's written is amazing. So everyone, I hope you check it out. We'll link to it in the show notes. But that context is really critical. And there were some like reviewers that sort of kind of made fun of the social justice aspect of this film, which we can get to in a little bit. That is just so reprehensible and irresponsible, even in 1996, but extra today in 2020.
I like, yeah, you said the context, I think is important to know when you go to sit down and watch it, because what also makes this film work so well is the smallness of their lives is really contained in this 2 hours. You know, how much space they take up in their worlds, right?
Yes.
They don't, when Stoney goes out for dinner with Blair Underwood, who probably had a name in the, I just keep calling him Blair Underwood. Handsome.
His
Blair
name was
Underwood.
Keith.
Keith. Wow, that's okay. Keith. And Keith is sitting with her, just speaking in his worldly way. So there's also a lot of levels of interesting, like sort of inner African American politics within that world as well.
Well, and class difference and stuff.
The class difference. One of the police officers that's trying to catch the thieves is also an African American woman, and here's Blair Underwood playing this other person who has got to a certain place and has a shorthand with travel and B school.
Went to Harvard.
And Stoney's never been out of Los Angeles. I mean, the last 4 years of her life, her parents were killed in a car crash. She was raising her brother. Like every single step of her life has been about survival, just about survival. And here is this man like in front of her who has, let's have Italian night and I'll buy you a dress. And she's just dazzled.
Yeah. And this idea that, at one point he talks about, like he asks her what her 5-year plan is and she doesn't know because and it's just this idea that like when you have to think about survival day to day, you don't really have time to think about what you'll be doing 5 years from now or what your hopes and dreams are.
But it's like, it's amazing. The other scene too, where she says it back to the girls as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like almost like he said it like it was an aphrodisiac. Like she got in her head this idea that maybe we could start planning, maybe something. I mean, the rest of us know that once you've started on armed robbery, it doesn't generally turn out well.
Well, that's the thing. All the things that have worked against them in their lives continue to work against them in the armed robbery system, such as their terrible, homophobic, misogynistic dirtbag boss steals their money, and then they are screwed fresh yet again. And all the tension is ratcheted up thanks to sort of the killing him because he's holding a gun on Cleo. So yeah.
And just the whole the sadness of it too is that I think for a lot of people who get used to the idea of a heist movie is there's this sense that it's all planned and there's costumes, and they're just put wigs on and go in a bank and steal. Like their faces are completely seen. It's not like I thought there would be long scenes, like looking at blueprints and like you're used to. But this was just, we got to get, like, literally, we're not going to have food.
Yeah.
Like, we have to get in there now. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is when you mentioned the Western, like this type of bank robbery was very like Western style, like
Yeah.
blow in there, hold people up, grab money and go.
Yeah, and hope there weren't any security cameras, which I guess was an easier way to do Westerns or Bonnie and Clyde. They didn't have a lot of security cameras set up to capture your image. But yeah, so there wasn't even a lot of real thought put ahead of, how easy will it be to catch us? Like, what are we going to do? And then you can't spend all the money. You got to make it look like you still have a job. Like these conversations hadn't happened before, because I think even with the title set it off, it's a spark, right? That's it. I'm done. We're going in. And that sense of the movie then when they finally do that, it's just, I mean, there was, like you said, funny, like that really funny scene when they're cleaning that boardroom and they're all doing Godfather impressions.
Yeah.
That was a great scene.
Yeah,
That is such a great scene because it was sweet and funny and just showed who they were. And it was like the only sort of moment of light we got after, that they decided on this road, like this is who they're going to be.
Yeah, I liked their rooftop scene as well. When they're like just drinking and smoking pot on the roof and just sort of like out there. And I was reading a lot about the film, and apparently that was like a lot of improvisation, between the cast, and like Jada and Queen Latifah have actually been friends for like 30 years, and the scriptwriter, he wrote their parts with them in mind, and then it turned out that they were friends. He didn't necessarily know that, and I just like, I think you can feel that between all of the characters. Like, it makes sense to me that like Kimberly Elise, this is her debut, and she plays that sort of like very, very well. I think like that she's sort of like young and she's like, just a little bit more fragile, but then she really like steps into it, and she comes alive in these ways that I think were really, I don't know, I was really impressed with her performance, and I think like all four of the leads had these really compelling performances. I don't think I've ever seen Jada like in such a compelling role. Like,
she's amazing in this movie.
She's amazing in this. Like when she's
Isn't it interesting to think we see them in Girls' Night again? Like,
I know, and I
Latifah-
love that. I was like, oh my
They
god.
apparently made an inside joke or something with wigs. They wore wigs.
I remember the wigs. I remember the wigs in Girls' Night, and it makes me want to watch Girls' Night again, which I should just do like every summer, anyways, because it's so fun. But like just to like feel that friendship. And the other thing I wanted to mention is just so F. Gary Gray, which like obviously the greatest name in the history of
kidding.
But I just like, he was 27 years old, like making this film, and I think he did a really amazing job. Like it's like the action sequences are tight, the pacing feels good to me. Like and just the fact that he was 27, I was just like, oh, and
you can sort of see, why he was picked to do Fast and Furious. I think he did Fast and Furious 8.
Yeah, so he ends up doing, after Set It Off, he ends up doing The Italian Job, which you love, Lisa.
Oh,
right?
Gosh, yeah. Well, see, there's another heist movie. I love that movie.
Yeah.
Mark Wahlberg, Charlize Theron one, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he did The Fate of the Furious, the 8th installment, and apparently that's the 18th highest grossing film of all time. Like You
watched the whole franchise, right?
You know that I am now a convert.
And so how was the 8th edition, the 8th installment?
I thought it was very strong.
You've seen all of these. That's like, how like 20 hours of your life now.
Yeah, and it's the greatest decision I ever made. I did it in the beginning of the pandemic. And I'm not going to say every single one is great at all, but I understand now why they are so beloved. And I can't even believe I'm going to say this. I understand why Vin Diesel is important to people. Like, I also, there are, I know,
wow. Quite a statement.
I know.
Yes, it is.
And there are some characters in the Fast and the Furious franchise who like I have cried numerous times watching these films. There is a character who I
You cried watching Fast and Furious films.
like 3 times.
Okay.
There's a character in Fast and Furious franchise that I love so much who we have long believed to be deceased, and the new trailer reveals
Are you
that
talking about Han?
Han's back in the trailer, but the movie's moved to
Yeah.
next year. What am I
You
gonna
convinced
do?
me to
but
watch.
you both have seen all
Well,
of them?
she was like raving about these movies so much. I've never seen any of them that I've started watching them now. And there is this character Han who's like the Asian character in the movie that
He's
I
the
am
best. He's-
deeply invested in, and it
Yep.
seems like he gets killed off, but then he's in all these subsequent movies.
Well, they
And
play
then-
with the timeline. That's the thing. They play
Yeah,
with the
and
timeline.
then his murderer seems to become part of the Fast and Furious family, and so now I'm deeply invested in this Justice for Han movement that the fans started, and I want to get a T-shirt. But it seems like he might return for the next installment somehow.
I think I've seen the first one.
Like the first
But
one's
I don't-
fine, but it really picks up with
If you say 4, I'm
I
gonna
think
die.
I think 5 actually is where it really gets good.
That is a huge ask.
Yeah.
I know,
mean,
I
I'm
know,
sorry.
I
That
know,
is.
I know. I do not care about racing. But it's just
Is that what they're doing? Are they racing or are they trying to get away from people?
well,
No,
they're both.
It's like street racing.
Street racing.
Oh.
But like the best part is this. Sorry, we're gonna go back to Set It Off in a second, but this, because now this is part of like the universe of Fast and the Furious because of F. Gary Gray, directing the Fast and the Furious 8. The movie starts with them just being like these street racers who like steal hijack giant trucks with like worth of like electronics, and now it's evolved to like they literally save the world a lot. Like it's like
I want to get all of us Justice for Han T-shirts.
I'm into it.
Well, I have to like get into this then because I have to know who
but
Han is.
but now I also
The only Han I know is Han Solo from
Oh
Star
no,
Wars,
this
right?
Han is now my only Han.
Yeah.
But anyway, Justice for Cleo shirts as well, because I just really Cleo. So
Yeah.
can I just talk about Cleo for a little bit? So I really loved Queen Latifah's portrayal, the embodiment of that sort of like anger at just being othered in all of these like multiple ways, the heat that she has making out with her girlfriend, and like just having this girl, like when she buys the woman the lingerie and has her dancing for her
Dancing
on
the
this
top
car,
of the car, yeah.
and she's in this great sort of like bustier as well. I was just like, I am into this on every level. And I think she does such a great job balancing the like humor and heart of Cleo, as well as that sort of like sort of like that fiery resentment of like, she is a car thief, this is how she makes her like living, she knows she's not on the right side of the law, and like the law is not a thing that has ever helped her at all. And so that she's so into like elevating like stepping up into bank robbery.
I just love the fact that every time she gets in and steals a car, she's got to get rid of the CDs. It's
Oh my
like
God,
the worst insult
It's
I was
so,
in
so
the world.
I was
is
so
bad
stressed
music.
about that because it was like you're leaving your fingerprints on all
Fingerprints.
these CDs.
But that's the thing of this movie. Like, and I don't. If I was talking to the screenwriters and the director, I would be curious to ask them, because for me, the sense was that the fact that it was just all happening now. There wasn't a lot of thought. Like, we're just so desperate. We're in it now.
Yeah.
We're not like premeditated. Like, wipe off your fingerprints.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I mean, they literally, like, I'm saying, they put wigs on.
Yeah.
And then they ran in a bank, right? Like,
They put the wigs on in the bank.
in the bank.
I was
and
Yeah.
they went in.
I did pause for a second. I was like, I think you could have put those on in the car.
No gloves,
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah.
Right. To about leaving fingerprints, nothing at all. So, I feel like, and I don't know for sure though, it felt like that was intentional, just for us to get that sense of this desperation that, we don't have months to plan this. We're not, going to get like I keep bringing up Point Break, they've got, president's masks right over their face, right?
Mhm.
So they're called the president or, robbers or whatever. Not even that.
Yeah, like
Even the plastic face thing
I
that
know.
they do doesn't help at all.
It doesn't, no.
No, it
But
doesn't. So
it's
it's like they don't care almost.
Yeah.
so how we've been working our way through Queen Latifah movies and TV. She apparently was taping Living Single at the same time as she did this movie and was so exhausted that she would fall asleep like in between takes. I was reading an interview with Vivica A. Fox, and like she was saying how even during that scene where they're doing The Godfather, she would just be asleep while the others were doing their takes.
Well,
She
she
was-
was
gosh.
she was working like 24 hours a day basically. Like
Yeah.
it sounded really brutal.
But we should revisit Living Single.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know if it's playing anywhere. Because I remember watching it when I was younger, but I don't know if it's like on TV streaming anywhere. So I'll look into that for Canada.
Yeah.
It's funny that happens to so many young actors. I remember that same thing with like Michael J. Fox doing Family Ties and then Back to the Future. And that's why everything in Back to the Future is at night,
No, that makes sense.
because he would literally go. And I just think, I definitely get why all of you burn out. Like, that is, but feast or famine, right? In this profession.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I just
You're
think,
either taking all the jobs or you're not taking any of them.
well, and Queen Latifah, like, I mean, just that was such an intense period of work for her, as well as music, and like,
Yeah.
she's got
Well,
songs
and the
on
characters
the
are
soundtrack,
so-
and the characters are so different, and
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's really anyway.
Apparently, soon after the movie was such a success and stuff, there was some talk about doing a sequel to it. But Jada Pinkett Smith was not into it. She just turned it down. She
What's
didn't
just
want
like her in Mexico? Like,
Yeah, I guess like her story continues in Mexico.
Yeah, I can understand why like she's just like that's not the spirit of the first film. Like she's not necessarily looking to be like, just starting a new set it off and like building lifelong friendships with three new strangers that she, like
Right.
it's just not possible. Like it would be
I guess her life is she's alive, and that Jeep scene was beautiful.
that's as like triumphant as it's gonna get, I think.
Exactly, but I do think there's going to be for the rest of her life terrible nightmares and all kinds of trauma.
I
But
mean,
having to live through that.
But it's also a thing where like, her three best friends were able to deliver her this sort of freedom, right? Because she'd never been out of Los Angeles before.
Yeah.
She'd never she had that conversation with Blair Underwood about like, do you feel free, when she was like looking around his apartment, and she obviously didn't have a sense of that for herself, like what freedom meant.
yeah.
And then when you see her driving in that Jeep, like, yes, all of these horrible, horrible things have happened to her. Like her brother got murdered, all of her best friends are dead. But like, there does seem to be a sense of freedom for her
Yes.
there. And
No,
it's
I
something
get
it's
that.
something that her friends sacrifice themselves to give to her.
Yeah, and there's
Yeah,
a
so-
liberation there and in that and I think there is a joy in that as well. I can see why she would be like, no, we know what like we saw like this sort of like glimpse of freedom that Stoney is experiencing, and like I mean maybe she'd want to do it now. Who knows? Like I feel, if there's gonna be like how like AG you went really deep into all the Rambo movies?
No, Rocky.
Rocky. I'm so sorry, not Rambo. Rocky.
How dare you?
How
God.
dare I? My God, sorry. I'm so sorry.
Wow.
But like,
wow.
Stoney's next
Wow.
generation, like, maybe like what she's been doing anyway, I don't know. I think that could be cool, but
Well, she's quite. I mean, what is she like by the time this happens to her in the movie? She's like what, 25, 24?
maybe. I feel
Maybe.
like I feel like
Yeah,
more she's
maybe
like
a little
22,
younger.
23 even,
Yeah. Okay. So there's a lot ahead
Yeah. Huge amount
for
of time.
sure.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're right. I mean, the fact is, they did want us to know that she was free now. Like this is a woman on her own for the first time. We saw her in a place with no other people around her.
Yes.
There was nothing, and she does make that phone call, which I also thought was I would have his phone tapped if I was like in another movie, but
It's like, again, the cops aren't smart in this film.
obviously no. And that okay, let's talk about that white cop
Uh-huh.
because we're all used to the white savior.
Well, this is
It,
not that film. Yeah. I
it is
mean,
not that film. However,
mhm.
that scene where he sees
Stoney on the
Jada
bus.
on the bus, as you know, he's just a bunch of people, and when he's walking toward Vivica, it feels like he's like I really screwed you over
Mhm.
badly before. This is not going to absolve you from the rest of your life in prison. However, sorry, and the whole other thing too. But what do you make of that he watched her leave?
I mean, I thought it was actually really generous on the part of the script and on the part of
Mm-hmm.
like F. Gary Gray that like they allow for that sort of complicated read on this cop. I mean, the the hope would be that he has done some thinking about how he is part of a system that is
Yeah.
utterly corrupt and utterly violent and racist and awful. But I don't know that that's. I think this one moment is going to be the extent to which he reflects on his complicity.
Well, given that we're here now,
Yeah.
yes, I would argue
Yeah.
that you're correct because nobody watched that movie and said, "Oh, wow, that resonated."
Cops did
That
for sure.
no.
Yeah.
But when you look at it now, it's just so obscene how much like the resources that are spent, like Lisa mentioned,
God.
in like
Yeah.
trying to track down these women who have robbed a few banks. Like you need a SWAT team, the entire Los Angeles police force. There's like hundreds of people involved in this operation.
Well, even the fact that there's such a thing as armed robbery, like the worst thing we can ever imagine is stealing money at a
Exactly.
bank.
Like they hadn't
Like
hurt
that's
anybody.
the worst. Like everybody, even people who aren't even in any kind of law enforcement or in the legal profession, know that armed robbery is the biggie. Right? You brought a gun into a bank. Of all the things, you know what I mean? Like that is a bizarre concept.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I found it really notable that the thing that's distracting the police during that one heist that they do is that they're kind of this homeless person is being harassed and arrested for loitering on the street in
Mhm.
front of the bank. So that is also a commentary.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're like it's just and it's so little money. And even like going back to when Stoney's brother is shot and shot with so much force and so
Yeah.
much just the gross just the gross indifference, like 40 cops firing on one 17-year-old black kid is so disgusting. And I it felt like I was really grateful for the way that the director gave space to the reaction, like Stoney's reaction, and let that be the real like indictment of these police officers.
Yes.
I would like to like retroactively take to task a few reviewers of this film, if you guys would so
Go for it.
indulge me, because
Is it because it's the ones that we're comparing it to Waiting to Exhale? That is,
I mean that's just like that's just like lazy racism.
Yeah.
But also like some of the cases where like even they were trying to like be a little bit complimentary, they were still wildly racist. So Stephen Holden of the New York Times said they Set It Off to Thelma and Louise, stating, quote, "In formulaic Hollywood terms, Set It Off might be described as Thelma and Louise ride shotgun in the hood while waiting to exhale." I am truly stunned by that particular title that he created for the film.
That is awful because that is awful
really
because
proud of himself.
Yeah, there are like notes of Thelma and Louise. In fact, they bring it up.
Sure.
You know, and that women push to the end of and just F it, let's just do this. So I think that could have been a really interesting conversation if somebody had
he
bothered
doesn't
to try.
want to have that
No.
conversation at all. And
No.
he goes on to be like relatively complimentary throughout the rest of the film, but he was so pleased with himself, I believe, in that particular string of words that he just stopped there. Ebert, he compares it to Waiting to Exhale, but with a strong jolt of reality. The Variety's Emmanuel Levy, who I just want to encourage everyone, if you haven't clicked on the link to look at his mustache, please do, because this is not a human that we can take seriously. He, quote, influenced by Thelma and Louise and Waiting to Exhale, this well-crafted Girls in the Hood has social conscience and soul. Queen Latifah gives a career-making performance that should make her a big Hollywood star. So he really sets up with this like sort of racist nonsense and then follows it up with a genuine compliment and an astute one at that. And I've seen this happen so often, and particularly in the 90s, there was this real cruel streak in a lot of reviewing where people were just trying so hard to get famous from their own reviews of things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's super gross. And then the last one I want to share, if that's okay. USA Today. Overlong, overdone, and overwrought. The narratively challenged Set It Off gets off on exploitation shock and social conscience shock in equal measure. This is just a like patently wrong, ridiculous review, and it makes me mad.
Yeah, and not to be able to see all of those, what the story is trying to tell you.
Well, like the reviewers are telling on themselves in these moments, you know, and
well, they don't care,
and they don't care. But I mean, that also is a form of telling on yourself. Like, I think that obviously, like, the Rotten Tomato score was like 67% amongst critics, but 90% amongst the audience, and like the audience reviews were like, millions and millions of reviews. Like, people love this movie.
Mm-hmm. But it's a hard movie. I mean, it is a heartbreaking. Even the moments, like you said, of that are really funny. It's hard. It's sad. It is, you know, and it's almost like a hard film to accept.
But I think that's why it's so powerful, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. No, I think that in terms of crying, I really seeing Queen Latifah just getting shot like in Bonnie and Clyde, just those many, you know, just standing outside, and the glee at which all of them were just taking down this woman who had told the other people in her car, you should go, and knew that she was going to die. Everyone knew they were going to die, and that.
Yeah, and I found that when Jada Pinkett Smith's character was holding TT in the car while she was dying.
Oh my God, that broke my heart.
Yeah, Jada was so fantastic in that moment, that acting. It was so great.
Yeah, it was beautiful. I'm not going to read it, but there's also another essay that I would recommend for our folks by Sarah Ty Black. Wrote a really powerful piece for TIFF's website, and it's called How Set It Off Raked It Up. And the subhead is, the heist movie hit brought Black and Black queer women into the liberating space of action cinema. And it's such a good essay. I highly, highly, highly recommend it.
Yeah, I do too.
So I know that I said I wanted to talk about the sex scene, but I'm just gonna say good sex scene and weird, weird gold chain stuff.
Affecting.
Weird gold
Very
chain
nice.
stuff. But
the oils,
the oils,
lots of oils.
Blair
Lots of
Underwood though,
oils.
like, oh my God, even with that mustache, he can totally get it, and that's what my name is on our chat tonight.
Yeah, I saw that. I was thinking of going with Blair Underwood in a vest.
Yeah,
he had that '90s vest.
Yeah. No, it's great.
the brightly colored. That's a look.
I love
that
it.
one.
I love it so much.
Mm-hmm.
But I just love the friendship between these four, and basically like anything that you can find to read about the making of this film or the actors reflecting on the film is a real joy as well. So
yeah, it's worth it. I think it is worth the deep dive, and it's worth watching now, and I think it's worth getting angry about.
Absolutely.
Remembering that this is from 1996.
Yeah. So I know that seems redundant, but does this pop?
Very much. Pop.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I sound like a gun there. Like
no guns, but hella pops, guys. Hella pops.
Yes.
also love to leave our episodes in something we recommend. And Lisa, would you like to go first?
Sure. So I have just started reading a new book by a British author named David Mitchell, who you might know from Cloud Atlas. It is called Utopia Avenue, and it's about a British band from the 1960s. And later on, I hope I will be able to share the information about. I am going to host an author's evening with David Mitchell virtually. So that's why I can recommend it, because people can come.
Can you imagine if he was part of your bubble?
I'm very excited about it.
He's just part of your bubble, hanging out in your basement.
Yeah, that's how we're doing it. He's just coming over, and we're sitting in my living room. No, he'll be in. I guess he'll be in. I think he lives in Ireland now, and so yeah, that is coming up at the end of July.
Cool. AG, what about you?
So like I was mentioning earlier, I watched a lot of documentaries as part of the Doxa Festival last week. And this one in particular that won sort of the big prize, it was called Overseas. And I highly recommend, I don't know exactly where you can watch it, but I'm sure it will become available on various streaming services in the near future. But yeah, it's about women in the Philippines who go and work overseas as carers and helpers and nannies. And it's just a real inside glimpse into their lives, and like how they work in foreign countries where they don't know anybody. They leave their families. They're bound to these 2-year contracts where they have very few rights, and they have no idea what situation they're going to get into when they arrive. Like, the people they work for could be monsters, and they basically have very few avenues of recourse. And it's just a really eye-opening look at the sort of lives of Filipino overseas workers. And you don't realize it, but the Philippines, like, they really rely on these women to send money home as part of their economy. And these women have to spend time in training in schools, so they learn how, like, other families live, like how to take care of other people's children, basically. And it's really devastating to find all this out. And like, we know that we have a lot of Filipino workers, and even in Vancouver, and it's sort of, I would just highly recommend watching it, because it just really opens your eyes into, like, what their situation is.
That sounds great. What's the name of it again?
It's called Overseas.
Okay. I'm going with something that's entirely lighthearted and a little bit silly. But I watched the Big Flower Fight on Netflix.
Oh, is that the cooking kind of show?
It's actually the Big Flower Fight is it's a competition show about flower sculptures, and like giant 8 feet tall flower sculptures.
We're gonna have to throw Leo Damien in to compete.
It's really. I mean, like, the show itself, I don't think it's not like necessarily the most compelling competition, but it's super interesting because it ends up sort of like there ends up being quite a focus on sort of like different types of masculinity and like father-son stuff and like all kinds of interesting things. And then the actual like floral sculptures are so beautiful. Just ridiculously gorgeous. So it's a visually stunning series.
Oh, excellent. Okay, I've been wondering about that, and I will watch it then.
I recommend it. So thank you so much, everyone, for listening and hanging out with us, making us part of your pandemic and uprising listening parties. That's a terrible phrasing, and I will regret that immediately, but I'm going to just leave it. You can hang out with us on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook. You could email us at popthiscollective@gmail.com, and you could rate and review us 5 stars. Thank you so much for all the 5 stars. We have like a 5-star rating on iTunes, and that's thanks to all of you.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Andrea Gin is our producer and our co-host in these crazy times. So thanks for the double duty, if I never said thanks before. And it's nice to see all of you, sort of. And my hair looks good, so that's always important, really.
Yeah, it's especially nice to see you.
Yeah, it's especially nice to see you. You're right. Good work, AG. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.